With that note, I'm going to add that there's an election coming up, folks. Make your voting plan. Vote by mail, vote in person early, or vote on November 8th. Those are all possibilities. We like early the best. The Douglas County Dems do recommend that you vote no on the amendments on the ballot, and we'll be providing more details about that recommendation on our website. The Douglas County Dems recommend that you vote to retain the judges. We'll provide further information on our website, including the judges' previous votes on protecting abortion access, so that may be something that some of our justices have done better than others. So, and I will remind all that the candidates running as Democrats up and down the line support protecting abortion access. So, on that note, let us turn to our program today, and the first thing we're going to do is introduce Gina Rapace, who's going to talk for just a couple minutes, and she is running for Secretary of State, and give her a listen because she's got a lot to say.
Well, nothing like being the person that runs in late and jumps on the mic, so I'm not going to talk long. First of all, thank you, Pat, and thank you, everyone. I'm really excited that you guys get to hear from our awesome union reps. They have been amazing supporters of mine, and as you all know, the unions built our middle class, and it is so important that we support them. Well, I literally am not going to take up much time because I know you guys are here to hear someone else, but I just appreciate the opportunity as your Democratic nominee for Secretary of State to just spend a couple of minutes talking to you about our election. As I just heard as I was coming in, abortion is still on the ballot. And as the Secretary of State, that is the chief elections officer in the state of Kansas. And everything starts and ends with your ability to vote. And not just vote, but have that vote counted. And unfortunately, we have a current incumbent sitting in that office that I don't believe you can trust with your vote. He's sitting on 45,000 provisional ballots right now from 2020. He is refusing to even let Loud Light know who those ballots are from. And Loud Light's not trying to find out who they voted for. They just want to know who those belong to and whether those ballots actually counted. And Scott Schwab has now, in defiance of the Kansas Open Records Act, and has vowed to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court just to make sure Kansans don't know if their ballot counted. This is why this is important. Our current governor is in a neck-and-neck race, although there's now a third-party person in the race, which we're hoping will help her a little bit. But we can't count on that. So what happens if she and Derek Schmidt are within a few hundred votes of each other, a few thousand votes of each other? Scott Schwab is administering this election. I'm planning to beat him, but let's be very clear. When Vote No was defeated by huge margins in our largest counties, he allowed a recount and even took a credit card as collateral. My point in saying all this is voting is the most powerful tool we have in our democracy. If we don't vote, we don't have a voice. And we can't just vote, we have to vote in big numbers. I need you not only to vote, I need you to take your neighbors to vote. I need you to make sure that your neighbors and friends are registered to vote. Because everything you're going to hear about today, everything you value starts and ends in that ballot box. So I'm going to just end with a quick story. It's about Martin Niemöller. He was a Lutheran pastor in Nazi-era Germany. Some of you have heard me say this before, and some of you are probably familiar with this quote. And what he said was, when they came for the socialists, I said nothing, because I wasn't a socialist. When they came for the trade unionists, I said nothing because I wasn't a trade unionist. When they came for the Jews, I said nothing because I wasn't a Jew. But when they came for me, there was no one left to speak. If we do not get out and vote in huge numbers the same way we did on August 2nd, we have to do that on November 8th, or who will be speaking for you? Who will be standing up for our unions? Who will be standing up for your children and grandchildren? Who will be standing up for your right to have autonomy over your own body? We must vote, and I can promise you, as your Secretary of State, I will make sure every vote counts. I will make sure everyone has access to ballot. I'm going to make it as easy as possible to have as many people vote, because that is the nature of our democracy. So I promised I'm going to be true to my word and get out of the way so that you can get on with the great business of hearing for this wonderful panel. But my name is Gina Repass. I am running for Secretary of State, and I thank you for your time, and I appreciate your support and your vote on November 8th. Thank you. I'm choosing you. You're a good friend. Thank you guys. I'm just going to do this.
I think Matt Hall knows everybody. And we are very grateful. Matt Hall is the Secretary-Treasurer of Teamsters Local Union 696 and has been a strong voice and leader in organizing labor in Kansas. He's going to moderate our panel today. He has put together a group of panelists that represent a pretty good swath of labor activity and organized labor activity in Douglas County. And we are very eager to hear from them. I am going to mention that we are probably going to run about 45 minutes to see how we're doing. They probably have way more than that to share. And then we also have some time for questions. There's a microphone here. Jim Brook is holding 3x5 cards for those that would rather write their question down. And so if you think that you might have one, go ahead and let him know, or raise your hand now, or sometime toward the 45-minute mark, okay? All right. Matt is going to introduce our panelists today. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all so much for being willing to come and participate. Go, man.
Thank you, thank you. My name's Matt Hall. Unfortunately, Robert De Niro could not be here today. They sent me instead. It's an Irishman joke for people that didn't get it. I figured I'd get that out of the way now. Saying an Irishman joke to a Teamster is like saying an Oz joke to a Kansan. We just need to get out of the way. I'm a second-generation trade unionist. I'm a sixth-generation Kansan. I grew up in Osage County, Kansas, down by Olivet, and I graduated from KU in 2004. Thank you. I've worked in the labor movement my entire career. I started as a field canvasser with Working America AFL-CIO. I worked for COAST and AFT, and by the grace of God, I've been a Teamster for the last decade. I'm Secretary-Treasurer and Business Agent for Teamsters Local 696, Political Coordinator for Teamsters Joint Council 56. I'm also the Chair of the Working Kansas Alliance. Terry Forsyth actually started that. He's in the background there. Thank you, Terry. Recently, our local has been doing a lot of organizing. I'm not sure you've seen it in the paper or not. We've organized the majority of the city workers into the Teamsters. We have also organized the Democratic Party coordinated campaign. Santiago's here. He started that campaign. We organized them and got a contract within 3 weeks. So that was a pretty quick campaign. And we're currently an organizing campaign with kitchen staff at Pioneer Ridge. Johnny's here today from that campaign. Thank you for having us here. It's been a heck of a week. The railroads averted a railroad strike by finally giving away from their corporate greed on the 11th hour, getting a deal. Now, I'm not sure everyone knows what those negotiations were about, but those negotiations got held up because of sick time. The basic idea that if you're sick or if your loved ones are sick, that you can actually be with them and not be terminated and fired. How did we get here? The railroad unions are some of the oldest unions in the nation, and they are fighting over the right to not have to come to work if they're sick. It has been 40 years of losing our rights and fighting to get us to this point, and unfettered corporate greed. I'd like to thank Douglas County Dems for hosting this and setting this up, and Pat Willer for setting this up as well. I'd also like to thank Ian and Josiah who do the sound. They set up all the stage, and they're doing live streaming. Thank you, guys. Beautiful setup. We have a series of questions, some from the Douglas County Dems, some from ourselves. But with no further ado, I'm going to introduce the panel. Over here we have Damien Levings. Damien's with the Mid-American Carpenters Regional Council. He's been a member since 1997 and a representative since 2018. Beside him, we have Seamus Albritton from IAF Local 1596. He's the president. Now, Seamus has worked locally as a firefighter for 10 years. He's spent most of his career on the executive board of his union. He currently serves as president of the IAF Local 1596. They represent roughly 140 of the hardworking firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics in Lawrence Douglas County Fire and Medical, and work to ensure they have what they need to provide quality service for the community. Welcome, Seamus. Megan Epperson, she, her pronouns, is in her 9th year of teaching elementary music at Lawrence Public Schools. As a representative of the LEA, Megan served in many roles in LEA, including business representative, membership chair, negotiations chair, and most recently as treasurer. Megan's done significant work at the Kansas and national levels with the NEA and advocates and supports over 3 million members across this country with a vision of improving schools for every child. Korbin Hogan is a Starbucks organizing committee at Starbucks on 23rd Street in Osdale. He's a barista for Starbucks for nearly 4 years. When not at work, Korbin's studying psychology at the University of Kansas. Andrew Kustodowicz, sorry about that, is a grad worker and PhD candidate in history at KU. He's also president of the Graduate Teaching Assistant Coalition, GTAC. Hannah Allison-Natale, all right, good, president of PAL-CWA, she, her, or they, them pronouns. Hannah's a paraeducator who works high school students with disabilities in Lawrence Public Schools. Hannah's been the labor movement community organizer for 10 years. After moving here 4 years ago and joining Lawrence Public School staff, Hannah became part of the effort, along with her coworkers, to win a union for all hourly staff in Lawrence Public Schools. In May of 2021, the school board recognized the union for all hourly classified staff. The members of PAL-CWA have made important improvements to their working conditions through their first 2 contracts, and last year won a wage increase for all hourly and classified workers. Congratulations. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to ask questions, and we're going to let the panel start answering. Whoever wants to do it. You have a microphone right there. We have this microphone here. If someone's not talking, I'll probably call upon you, because we want to hear from everyone out here, because you all have unique and different perspectives. That's very important, so we can understand the local labor community and the local labor movement. So without further ado, we'll start answering the questions. The first question would probably be for everyone. Can you speak briefly on the jobs that your members and your union does and your structure? If we want to start right here, if you're ready. No pressure.
No pressure at all. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. So I can say a little bit about Lawrence Public Schools and who we represent. So our union, like Matt said, is PAL-CWA. It stands for Personnel Association of Lawrence - Communications Workers of America. So we're affiliated with a 500,000 member union that is a national union, the Communication Workers of America, that you would know maybe as representing AT&T and Verizon workers, but a variety of workers, including public sector workers like us and nonprofit workers, and famously now video game designers, which is very exciting. And also like the New York Times, the News Guild is also a part of our union. So that's our national union. Locally, we represent 547 hourly staff that do 26 different jobs in Lawrence Public Schools. The majority of our members are paraeducators. That's our largest group. That's about 250, so not quite a majority. But close to half of our unit is paraeducators, which is my job. We work with students with disabilities. We provide instructional support and help modify lessons for students to make sure they get the support they're entitled to under the federal law that provides for special education for students. And then, of course, we have custodians, we have electricians, plumbers, secretaries, administrative assistants, all kinds of workers, food service workers, all kinds of workers that do clerical work at our central office. So that's who we represent. We are all hourly workers, and so a big part of what we've been fighting for, as Matt said, is to raise our wages. We have about 270 workers that make between $11 or $10.91 and $13 an hour. So that's been a big part of our fight and a big driver behind our unionization.
I'm sorry, I've never spoken on a panel like this before. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. So GTAC is affiliated with American Federation of Teachers, so we're under AFT Kansas and also AFT National. GTAC represents about 900 graduate teaching assistants at the University of Kansas. We do a variety of different jobs. We are instructors of record, meaning we do all of the teaching for some classes, but it can go all the way to just being a grader or more of kind of an assistant. We just ratified a new contract this week, actually, for higher pay. Yeah. And that's mostly what we're organizing around, is better pay and a living wage for the workers who make around like $43 million in tuition revenue at a third of the cost for KU. But yeah.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I also have never spoken in a panel like this before, and so I'm in the local Starbucks union. We are affiliated with Starbucks Workers United, which is settled in Chicago. We work mostly with the local unions, especially the ones in the Kansas City area. We focus, like, our unionization effort is a focus on like better treatment and like training standards. And then like a wage increase would be nice, of course, but we're mostly focused on just improving the quality of like life at the job, and yeah, that's all I got.
All right, good morning. My name is Megan Epperson. I'm with LEA, the Lawrence Education Association. Our affiliate groups are KNEA, the Kansas NEA organization, and then also the NEA. One of our most famous members that you may have heard before is Dr. Jill Biden. She's someone, NEA represents more than 3 million educators across the country, and so we work really tightly at the national, state, and local levels to really work on improving public schools across all elements of our nation. The structure of our organization is such that the NEA works a lot at the national level from a political perspective, also helping lobby in Congress. Together, we are the biggest organized union in the United States. So we are really proud to represent educators, both classified members, teachers and education support professionals, as well as administrators and retired educators across the country. At the local level, our organization, LEA, represents over 600 members, 600 teachers here in town. We participate and support them through different organizing efforts at the negotiations table, fighting for higher salaries and improved working conditions. We've worked a lot on COVID protocols the last couple of years to keep both staff and students safe. And we also have an elected board that meets monthly. We have building representatives that represent every single building in our district. And we also meet monthly with them to coordinate different things with our agendas to make sure we're representing our members and moving forward on different committees and working in tandem with our school board. So we have a lot of different activities happening at all different levels, and there's lots of ways to get involved.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Seamus, Albritton. I'm with International Association of Firefighters, Local 1596. That is the union that represents the employees of Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical in town. We are associated with International Association of Firefighters, represents 300,000 plus firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, dispatchers across the US and Canada. So the numbers shake out to about 9 out of every 10 career firefighters or paramedics in the States are union members with the IFF. So chances are, if you know a career firefighter, you also know a union member. Our local affiliate number, like I said, is Local 1596. We have a strong history. We formed in 1966 and been negotiating with the city ever since. So Teamsters may have the numbers on us now, but our claim to fame is that we're the originals. We're the OG when it comes to negotiating against City Hall. But, you know, our issues, it's not just wage and benefits, especially with a job like ours, or the people that we represent. Can be inherently dangerous and inherently affect the safety of the citizens of Lawrence and their well-being. So we're talking about everything in our contracts, from appropriate staffing to make sure that there's enough people to handle your emergency, to safe working equipment, and all those things to make sure that when you call 911, you're taken care of. So it's not just about us, it's about the community as well.
Yeah, again, I'm Damien Levings. I'm with the Carpenters Union. I'm actually a representative for the Mid-America Carpenters Region Council, the second largest council in the country. I'm just a local representative in the Kansas area. My job is essentially to represent carpenters, anybody from layout to the door locks on the job site. I am out to improve the lives of the carpenters, wages, safety, so we don't end up having to call Seamus on the job. And surprisingly enough, I actually represent the companies that we also are signatory with. So it's kind of more of a unique as some of these others. So that's.
So all the unions have different structures and we represent different workers, but at the end of the day, the commonality we all have is we're there to make sure workers are taken care of on the job site with wages, that people can feed their family and making sure they have a good quality of life. For Teamsters, we represent in town, UPS, First Students, so the school bus drivers, P1 group drivers as well. We're primarily a truckers union at our core, but at the end of the day, we represent everyone. We say we have everyone from accountants all the way to zookeepers. We'll organize any worker, we'll get them a contract, and we stand by any worker that wants to improve their work site. The first question we have for the panel today, and I'll let you guys, I won't call on it, I'll let you guys decide who's going to answer this time. We are in what can only be described as a labor wave in Lawrence. Why? Yeah, right? Why do you think we're seeing such a new and renewed interest in unions in our community? And then also, what problems and prospects are we facing with the labor wave? Anyone want to take this one? Seamus, all right. You got one right there. Cool.
I think it works. Oh, this is a fun one, Matt. So, yeah, the labor wave is not just here in town. I think anybody that's paid attention to national media, it's going on across the country. And I'm certainly not an expert where I could point to a specific reason. My personal opinion is that there's multiple factors here. One of them obviously is the economic pressures that are going on within our economy and our nation, as well as the pandemic obviously shined a light on some of the flaws in which the system, especially when it comes to healthcare and worker health and safety on the job. Some of, if you're not employed or you don't have a good employment with good benefits, well, you're kind of left out to dry in a situation such as the pandemic. Another piece of it, and we're really seeing it with our people, is the generational changes, the generational mindset change of what brings dignity to your life and what makes you a human. Past generations may have emphasized finding purpose within your profession or purpose within your work. Now more than ever, people are realizing that you get human dignity on your pursuits outside of your profession and outside of your work, and that's what it truly means to be human. To make that happen within the economic system that we have built ourselves here, not only locally but nationally, it takes a force like organized labor to create work environments where people have the time and the means, the economic means, to pursue those things that bring them happiness, joy, meaning to their lives outside of the workplace. As far as prospects or issues that are going on here locally, my focus sometimes can be a little narrow just being a public employee. I think there's still some opportunities to make some gains here for our people. The resolution that governs how City Hall employees negotiate with their employers, certainly we need to have another look at it. Parts of it are not up to national standard. Douglas County still hasn't adopted any kind of resolution or state legislation that allows those employees to negotiate with their benefits. And frankly, this is my personal soapbox. I do find it slightly ironic that there are, especially within City Hall, that the division heads, department heads, have the ability to negotiate their wages with the commission, but there are still employees under the supervision of those department heads that don't have bargaining rights. So there's plenty of opportunity to make improvements to workers' lives within this county alone. So.
And with LEA, we're more of an established union, and much like the firefighters, we've been bargaining since at least the 60s here in Lawrence alone. But one of the barriers and things that we've been encountering within this labor wave and such too, I think also comes from a cultural background and a cultural perspective from the thought of individualism and capitalism tend to drive a lot of the decisions that we make as individuals. And so one of the questions that we're trying to answer within our union is how do we shift the idea of a union membership from the concept of a pop machine, where you put something in to get something out, to a gym membership, where you put something in and you're benefiting a larger group of people, and there are many ways for you to participate and grow within that membership so that it goes beyond yourself. Bringing up a not so popular labor topic, thinking about Amazon Prime, I could use it for Amazon Prime for myself and myself only. I get the benefit of that membership. So individualism and that capitalistic mindset of I want to see exactly what the union does for me and me alone, that's been a real big challenge for us because we have such a societal expectation of putting in to get out, when being in a union is about contributing to a larger good. You may not see the benefit tomorrow. I may not ever cash in on the liability insurance that our NEA provides for us for me to use in the event of being sued, but I know that being a member means I'm contributing to everyone else having access to that too. And so that kind of goes against that societal narrative of, I want something with the benefits for me and me alone. So that's been something we've been grappling with and trying to figure out how to stay not only relevant to our folks, but making sure that we also educate about the benefits of unions, the benefits of working for each other and bargaining for the collective rather than the individual.
Okay, I have to confess that I love this question and I think about this all the time. So, but Matt told me I have to keep my comments to a minimum because I don't want to take up the entire panel. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what's happening nationally and how we got here. So I think to know how we got to this moment of a massive wave of mostly young people, but not entirely young people, wanting to unionize their workplaces, going up against Goliaths like Starbucks, like Howard Schultz, like Amazon and Jeff Bezos in the private sector, and then also workers organizing in the public sector. I think we have to go all the way back to the 2012 Chicago Teachers Union strike. And I think that's important because it represents a group of workers taking over, taking leadership, winning elected leadership in a moribund, just totally a union that was really not doing anything, right? Not fighting for students, not fighting for workers, not fighting for any kind of political change or shift in the city of Chicago, which was fundamentally at the time under Rahm Emanuel's leadership, really trying to gentrify and push Black people out of the city of Chicago. And this reform movement in the Chicago Teachers Union, this group of activists who wanted to stop school closures, came together, ran for elected leadership in the Chicago Teachers Union and said, we're taking over this union and we're gonna make it about our students. We're gonna make it about community, and we're gonna make it about changing, like Megan said, this horrible individualistic, capitalistic mindset that we have in the city of Chicago that's bankrupting our schools, that's ruining education for our students. And they decided to go on strike. And even though the right-wing forces in the Illinois legislature made it nearly impossible for them to win or to authorize a strike, right? They had to have something like 75% of their membership needed to authorize a strike. Well, they organized and they got there and they went on strike. And they won incredible protections for their students, obviously better wages and working conditions for themselves, but I think that's like a turning point in the history of the labor movement. And I think there's also some other really important conditions that led to this, or really important other pieces, like Seamus talked about, the economic conditions we're in, right, where people are just being asked. We've seen productivity continue to go up until the pandemic, right, but wages continue to stagnate. And then I think amid that, we've also seen the uprisings around Black Lives Matter, Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 candidacy, and these other reform movements inside unions. And I think all of that has taught people, like, we don't have to put up with this shit. Like, we don't have to live in a terrible society. And unions are one way that we can fight to make our society better. And so I think all of that combined is really how we got here. Okay, thanks.
So likewise with higher ed, right, we are seeing this moment of like national organizing in higher ed with graduate workers. You know, in the audience, we have someone who organized over at Georgetown, the first union, and got their contract. I'm thinking about the Columbia graduate worker strike, you know. So there's also this movement here, and I think I'm really glad that the graduate, quote unquote graduate student in the room, didn't have to say capitalism, because like it's just such an easy thing. Yeah, thank you so much, Megan. But really, you know, we're seeing the university transform even more into just a capitalist business entity, you know, like with KU. How many of you are KU football fans? Round of applause. KU football? Yeah. So there's tons of money going into there, but no money going into the other side of the university, right? So we have a business, KU, treating their employees really shittily, right? Like I mentioned in the little intro, GTAs make $43 million in tuition revenue, yet we're paid $18,860, I think is the new number. And it's, for us, it's really a kind of a cultural battle in a way. You know, a lot of people don't think that GTAs are actual workers. You know, it's really sad to see when the Lawrence Journal World or someone publishes an article, you see in the comments, oh, well, they're just graduate students, they want more money. Well, we're workers, you know, and so having to fight that public perception has been really difficult, as well as there's a lot of legal challenges that keep graduate workers kind of exploited, like health insurance, you know. My check comes from the state of Kansas, but I can't get employee state health insurance because the law says anyone enrolled in a PhD student cannot be counted as a state employee. So it's stuff like that that really is a challenge to organizing graduate labor at the university.
Thanks, Andrew. If not, no worries, we can go on to the next one. So next question. Oh, Korbin, sorry.
Oh, geez, okay. I'm not sure I have like anything incredibly unique to add to this like topic, but I feel like, as everyone said, like the pandemic really highlighted how much businesses are getting away with, whereas like you'd see like Starbucks has a like record profits in the past like 20 years, and then the next year or the next day they announced like, oh, customers don't have to wear masks in the lobby anymore, and it's just like they're kind of like walking on you, and it's like that is a problem that like highlights like workers wanting to organize like on a national level, and then on the local level, northeastern Kansas has been like famously like pro-union. We've got Topeka, we've got Lawrence, all union towns, and then so like I think Lawrence is a unique position where you have a constant influx of consumers in the college students, and then the people that are like stuck working here, they're trying to establish like better lives for themselves, they're trying to improve the community. They get walked on by their bosses, their corporations that want to, they're just favoring the next wave of students. They're looking for the next profits. They're cutting conditions in favor of the like, in favor of more money. And the workers want to stand up for that, and I think that explains a lot of like the local movement, at least.
I think Korbin brought up a good point. From my perspective personally, the only workers that we represent that did not work during the pandemic were our school bus drivers. Every other Teamster was out there and working. Well, workers were told during the pandemic they're essential. And society honestly could not move forward without their labor and without their work. Or if workers are gonna be essential and told they're essential and have to work to be essential, then they need to be treated essential. And people haven't been seeing that for the last 40 years. And they're sick of it. And they want to be, if they're being told you have to work, society can't move forward, they understand that now. And they're going to make sure they get taken care of, from my perspective. But next question we got. What do you see as the future of labor and why? What do you think, Damien? You want to take this one? Yeah. All right.
Well, as cliche as it sounds, actually, for us, the youth is going to be the future. I mean, we have to replace the people that are actually my generation. We're going out faster than we're bringing them in. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. And this is kind of, I don't know where I have to go a different way with some of the other ones, is we have to be an alternative to secondary education. I mean, it's not for everybody. It wasn't for me. I dropped out of school to become a tradesperson, and we have to tell the youth that they're not doing themselves a disservice by not going to college and getting into the trades, because we are an essential part of bringing this country forward. And so that's kind of where I'm.
We can go to the next question if no one else.
I think for higher ed, it's going to be militancy, because it is a cultural kind of shift that we're going to have to make, and it's going to take graduate workers really changing their mindset and being aggressive about fighting for our place in the university. You know, you brought up the point about management walking all over people and making those decisions. You know, we've got 900 different kinds of provosts that make, upwards of $100,000 when they don't step foot into a classroom. So we have to really be aggressive and militant in our messaging that we are entitled to all the wealth we create. So.
Okay, I have a thought. So I think to understand the future of labor, we have to look to the past. So I think the 1930s, the era of the Depression, and then the time we saw actually the most militancy, like Andrew's talking about, the most strikes and workplace actions by the greatest number of people per the population at the time was 1934. And I think what we won in that time period was the New Deal, and just an incredible reshaping of society along the lines of social democracy, right? And so I think labor has to turn toward, like Andrew's saying, that kind of militancy of being willing to strike, not just over the contract and at the bargaining table for better wages and working conditions, but also for Medicare for all the kinds of things that we need, the just like minimum of the social safety net that is being totally deteriorated by the right wing, or has been, like Matt said, over the last 40 years. We have to be willing to strike for that, right? And not just for our wages and working conditions.
Yeah. And on like the idea of like striking and really being, aggressive in this stuff, we have to show up for each other too. Like it has to be a coalition. It has to be solidarity. I think about, what if 100 GTAs walked out of the job? Well, probably all get fired and they'd replace us with lecturers. But if all of the unions had people walk out in response to, the Carpenters contract or the new firefighter contract, and it was more of like a local movement of solidarity, that would, I think, help, and I think we need to do that nationally too.
Anyone else? Next question. What barriers to organizing do people face, and what strategies might be helpful? What do you think, Korbin?
So as probably the most recent like organized person or like entity in the panel, I think that the barriers that we faced like most strongly, and like I think it is partially just like trying to get people involved, because if you're not seeing the direct results of your labors, you're going to be discouraged, and like you have to remind yourself that you're working for something higher than yourself constantly. And then I think like something that helps with that is having a good community of people that want to improve conditions, that are encouraging each other. And part of that's just like having a good rapport with your coworkers, the people you see every day, the people that share your issues, and like they also want to improve things.
Damien, down there.
Well, we actually have two major barriers, and they kind of tie together. One, we have a language barrier, and it's huge. And then we have an immigration barrier on the legal side of it. These guys hide in the shadows, and they are doing the work that we're trying to get them organized to do already, and they have no path to do it legally, and it's pretty hard in reality.
I think with the organizing campaigns we've seen, union busting is a multi-million-dollar business. These private corporations, companies will hire union busters, and they're really good with their closed-door meetings. They can do mandatory meetings. They can make you come to a meeting, and they can say all up to the legal edge, all these bad things about unions, about the Teamsters, about all this kind of stuff. And they also then say that unions are ineffective. Well, if unions are so ineffective at what we do, why are they spending millions of dollars to keep us out of there is the question. So we need to be countering those, make sure people are educated about it. When we do an organizing campaign, we make sure people understand the anti-union campaign that's coming. We make sure they're educated about it. We call it inoculation, because it's like, if you're gonna get sick, you give yourself a little bit of the virus beforehand, so they understand what's coming their way, which we're actually already seeing at Pioneer Ridge. They've already started their anti-union campaign. But the workers are not discouraged. They're fighting through it. I turn my thing off here. How has the relationship with your boss changed since you've organized, or how has the relationship with your boss changed since you've been being more active? And I'll leave that open to anyone. Megan, you want it?
Sure. And so for the perspective that LEA brings in this, we have been part of the district for decades and decades and decades. And so the benefit of where we are by being a more established union at this point is that we are able and are able to be brought in more easily, and we are very visible in our district. So it's easy for conversations to happen proactively with us because we are in district committees, because we are on budget committees, because we are at boundary meetings, we are at school board meetings, we are on negotiation teams. We are present in a lot of spaces. And then that also, working then with our exec board, we set up a lot of liaisons between our leaders and the district leaders so that we can have regular proactive meetings. Our local president meets with the superintendent monthly, meets with HR weekly, and so we have a really tight relationship that allows us to get in front of a lot of issues and handle things behind the scenes. It's not as visible and it's not as flashy, but it definitely solves a lot of the issues for our members in really positive, supportive ways. It's taken a long time to get to this point, though. We've had some very rocky relationships over the years. We've had different superintendents with different perspectives on the union. We've had different school board members have very different perspectives. So we're lucky to be at a point where we've cultivated that really strong relationship. But I think it's something to really look forward to, that as your relationship with your organization grows, you can really cultivate those strong, genuine relationships over time with those communication avenues that you know work to really grow the strength of everybody involved.
Anyone else, or next question?
I mean, I will just echo a lot of things he just said. Similar situation, a well-established union. Fortunately, in my tenure, I've been fortunate enough to work under multiple fire chiefs, multiple city managers, and multiple makeups of commissions. And just like you said, very different attitudes. I've worked for bosses that want to meet once a week and have coffee, and during that meeting, a lot of things get resolved to where, you know, it's the issue is resolved through a dance, not a fist fight. But at the same time, I've also worked with bosses that are doing everything possible to cut us out of the conversations. My advice for any union rep here or union reps listening, if you are going through a period in time where the bosses don't want to listen, is have some fortitude and stick with it. Maybe attack it through negotiations and get it into your contract that you're a part of certain discussions and part of certain committees. That's where we've done a lot of our good work.
I'll echo that too. That actually specific tactic has been very, very helpful for us. Whenever we create a new committee as part of our contract, we stipulate exactly the number of members each of us can appoint, and it's really helped in those years when the conversation's been harder. If we put it apart in language, they aren't able to go against that language, so using your different tools to help get your foot in the door as often as possible.
Anyone else or next one?
Relationship's not been great with KU. You know, it's been, yeah, I mean, 2 years of a contract negotiation. They paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to a union-busting lawyer who wasted the time of our negotiations team time and time again. Got us wrong documents, didn't respond to us in time, put forward factually incorrect narratives about the negotiations process in front of the Kansas Board of Regents. So it's really not been great, just patterns of disrespect throughout. So I wish we could be at a place where it wasn't like that, but yeah, but it is fuel, right? Like part of it is we're looking for a culture of respect, so we have to like fight really hard against the disrespect.
What have you learned from organizing that you wish you knew before? And this is to anyone.
I'm not saying anything that hasn't already been said here, but it's all people work. I used to think, being a young union rep, I wanted to be really good at research and negotiating and slamming my hand down on the table and say that's not the way it's going to be, right? It doesn't work like that. It's all there are times for those tactics. There certainly are, but at the end of the day, it's building relationships with your own members first, and being a good leader. And people work, not paperwork, and then building those relationships with the decision makers around your members.
I'll add too that building your team in a wise way is incredibly helpful. Know who's good at what and plug them in the right places. I'm not the union loud slam on the table person, as you can tell, but I am analytical. I will go do the research. I'll build Excel documents. I'll present to the school board about salary documents for an hour. I will do all of that kind of work and do the research, but I know who to find if I need someone to get upset, if I need someone to show up and be that person in the room. So you can build a lot of strength in your team by looking at who's going to bring different pieces to the table, putting them and pairing them with those directors, administrators, managers who need that person. If you've got somebody who's a relationship builder on their team, pair them with that relationship builder on your team and get them in a room together. You can start to tap into what you see happening and really build that to your strength. So use that analysis of who you've got in the space and then use them wisely.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. I'll answer this myself. When I first started organizing, I thought it was this big, insurmountable thing, really hard to do. You had to have all these skills and this training. The thing I've learned is that anyone can do it. All it is about education, 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 period, point blank. And it needs to be where anyone can do it, because if the labor movement's gonna continue to grow, we need hundreds of organizers throughout the whole nation, getting their workshops organized, getting people educated about it. So that's what I've learned from organizing, is that it's a skill anyone can do. It's just about talking to folks, having those relationships, making sure people are educated. That's all it is at the end of the day. Anyone else? next question, whatever. Go ahead, Hannah. I know you
I'll go
want to.
real quick. What I wish I knew beforehand, the apathy is real. You'll just like, I don't know, it's hard to motivate yourself every day to just like turn in whatever document you need to turn in, or like talk to your coworker about like something that should be super simple, but it just seems like more work. So having those like established relations with your coworkers is incredibly good, as touched on before. And I think that is the largest battle, and a lot of people feel intimidated by like connecting with the people that they see every day. But it's just, yeah, it's just like you take one step at a time. You remind yourself that you're helping your coworkers just as much as you're helping yourself.
I have 2 mics. So I think kind of going off that, right, it's like the relationship with your coworkers and your fellow union members is the only thing that matters, right? And I'll say I've been a union, like a paid staffer for a union. I've been a union member and not an elected leader, and now I'm an elected leader in our union. And so one thing I've had to learn as an elected leader is like what we do together as union members is like the only thing that matters. It's the most important thing. And that really the way we like being a part of a union is about believing that we have a certain way we can solve problems, and that certain way is by coming together with our coworkers and taking collective action, right? There are other ways to solve problems, and sometimes those are good and important too, but like at the root of what we do, we come together collectively with our coworkers. We have to have deep relationships, deep trust with our coworkers, and we take action to solve problems. And that is like where our power comes from. That is the most powerful thing we can do, is be alongside each other and struggle to make things better in our workplace.
Are we cut for time? Okay. I still got a couple more. Okay.
We're good if you're good, but these are extras. These are from the audience.
From the audience, okay.
But we're not rushing you.
Okay. Well, let's see what the audience has. How can Lawrence Douglas County communities support our local unions? That's actually our next question. So whoever answers that it's a great question. So how can the Lawrence Douglas County communities support our local union?
So as a union that works with folks who are directly funded with public funding, I feel really strongly about this one. Voting is huge for public schools, because we are at the point where we've been super lucky to elect a school board that is pro-education, that is supportive of education, that is here to work on teacher salaries, classified salaries. They want to commit to the work, but the budget isn't there. So our negotiations are stuck, not because people don't want to commit to it, but because there's no more money left to do it. So the way to raise salaries for folks right now, we're looking at cutting future teachers, or we're looking at closing schools in just some of the way, or cutting programs. So that's counteractive to everything our union stands for. There's no winning situation in any of these pieces. So what we really, really need is action at the state level for public funding. So if you're looking at any group that has any impact on budgetary dollars that come in, that's really how we can help support our unions when we're affected directly by what checks get written to us, because we can't bargain for higher salaries if there's no money to do it with. So voting for supportive school board members, voting at the state level to ensure folks are there to fully fund public education, fully fund different initiatives that provide access for funding to all levels of education is really, really critical, especially in the education industry.
We got another one if no one wants to answer. You want to go, Seamus? What are some ways that your union group has fought for better, respectful conditions for transgender workers? Go for it.
So one of the big things that KU wanted to do in this round of negotiations was take out a lot of the protective language in our contract, like the anti-discrimination language. They said they didn't need it because it was under the state, but we fought pretty hard to get language back in that goes beyond what like the federal language has. So that's one thing that we've tried to do.
In the coordinated campaign contract, there was a catch from one of the people on the negotiating committee. We have he, she language that refers to workers in there, and they wanted us to change it to they, and so we did that in the coordinated campaigns contract. It's one of the first contracts they've caught to do that, but that's something we're making sure that verbiage is more inclusive in our contracts. Anyone else, or next question? Okay. Can you explain what right-to-work law really does? This is a great question because there's a lot of confusion about this. So does anyone want to take this on? Hannah, go for it.
Okay, so there's like a couple ways to answer this question, but I'm going to give you a basic breakdown of labor law as I've learned it over the years. So there's two bodies of labor law in the United States. There's the body of labor law covered under the National Labor Relations Act, passed in the 1930s, and that covers private sector unions, excluding some unions like the railroads and airlines. And also notably, there is no law that protects the right of agricultural workers to organize in this country. So farm workers do not have the right to a union in this country. So incredibly messed up, horrible conditions. And there's a bill right now actually in California that I believe the governor still has refused to sign, to give agricultural workers, at least in California, those protections. Anyway, private sector labor law, basically, except for those few exclusions, covered under the National Labor Relations Act. Public sector labor law covered by state laws, right? So our union is organized under a state law, Megan's union organized under a state law, Seamus and the Teamsters organized under the city resolution, but public sector left up to the states and municipalities. So, but when we call something right to work, we effectively now have complete right to work in the public sector, meaning that people can benefit, people who are represented by the union can benefit from the union contract without paying dues. So the right wing came up with this right to work language that is like a total misnomer, right? It's not a right to work, it's a right to work for less. It's a right to not pay in to have your union be strong enough to represent you. So under a Supreme Court decision called Janus, we have entirely right to work in the public sector now, a recent, like within the last 10 years, I believe, Supreme Court decision. And then we have right to work in the private sector because the law that amended the National Labor Relations Act called Taft-Hartley that was passed in an upswing of conservatism after what I talked about earlier, the New Deal era of strike militancy, Taft-Hartley basically made it so that same thing as public sector that we have now, you can benefit from the union contract and be represented by a union without paying union dues or without paying something called an agency fee, which was a way that unions for a time were getting around this. And so if you look in the United States at the map of right to work states, not every state is a right to work state in the private sector. It directly maps on to the map of former slave states in the United States. And the reason for that, there's a great Lawrence Journal World article about this actually from several years ago. The reason for that is that the people who came up with these ridiculous right to work laws were actually white nationalist business owners and like evangelicals who they were afraid that their businesses were going to be overthrown by integrated Congress of Industrial Organizations unions in the South. So that's why we see that Southern states it's more common that Southern and Midwestern and Southwestern states have passed right to work laws, is that it was fundamentally this racist thing to prevent integrated unions from taking power in those states. So right to work, you hear that, you want to think right to work for less. It's first of all, it's a lie. And then also it's racist, right? It was to stop integrated unions. So we are opposed to right to work. Sorry for the long explanation.
That's good. That's a good explanation. I see people get right to work and due process confused all the time. They think since we're a right to work state, we can't represent someone in a termination. That's not what it means. It means what Hannah explained. So if you have a union in Kansas, you don't have to join it, but you still get the due process rights, meaning if you get terminated, we still represent you. So there's a lot of confusion about that, and that's the number one confusion talking to people I see. Megan, did you want to go for it?
just wanted to add one thing that relates to it. And work stoppage and strikes and things look very different in every state for each different either public or private sector. So taking teachers, for examples, we've heard a lot about teacher strikes in different states. In Kansas, it's strictly prohibited and you can be fired if you participate in a work stoppage or a work strike. So in other states, when you hear about the strikes in Seattle or in Ohio that were going on, sometimes those strikes are more spontaneous and the laws are less prohibitive in those states, or there are very, very specific ways that you have to participate in a strike where it has to be scheduled very far in advance. You have to let the district know months in advance you're going to be doing this. It's not as an immediate, well, I'm just gonna leave tomorrow. So those laws get very, very complicated as well. And if there's a lot of prohibitive laws here in Kansas too, where if it goes too far, if it looks too much like work stoppage, we had conversations about doing different types of planned work in different locations during COVID. That gets too close to looking like work stoppage, and there can be additional penalties that are laid upon the unions in those situations. So it's really challenging to tease out those laws because a lot of them, especially in the right to work states, have really, really restrictive language.
So just to circle back to that question about what's some of the barriers to organizing, I think Kansas labor law might be a big one. You know, we can't strike, we can't do much, unfortunately.
That's right. And Douglas County, the county itself, does not have any labor law on the books, like Seamus mentioned. We've talked, some of us talked to the commissioners about that. It's the only public entity now in the area that doesn't have a labor law and give the workers the right to organize into a union. That's something that needs to be changed. That's something that we feel is Douglas County and Lawrence values. And we hope the commissioners look at that and change that soon. We've talked to them, but we hope that gets changed soon.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add one thing on the legal regime, because I think what Megan and Andrew are saying is also been a barrier for us, right? In considering, you know, what's the action we can take if the strike is the most powerful tool we have as a union and it's illegal in our state, like, what do we do? And so just in terms of, I think there are a lot of ways we can change that legal regime. One way, obviously, we talked about today is voting and, you know, flipping the supermajority in the state house or breaking the supermajority in the state house and electing more pro-labor legislators. I think another path that other unions have taken, like in West Virginia, like in Oklahoma, is just to strike illegally, right? And to prepare for the fallout. And I'm not saying those risks are not, like, great, right? And the stakes are not high. They absolutely are. But in West Virginia, teachers struck illegally because over their health insurance plan. And they, you know, spent months and months, maybe even a year, organizing to prepare for the strike. And members did it even against the will of their union leadership that was much more cautious, right? And I'll say that is true for me, right? Like, as an elected union leader, I'm much more cautious about, because the union itself could be broken by something like that than maybe a member would be. But I think there's also, you know, in terms of the, like, long arc of history, there's a lot to be said, right, for creating the momentum to change the legal regime by fighting back against unjust laws, right? It should be a fundamental right to strike. It's like our highest power as workers. So just adding that to this conversation about the legal regime.
We're running out of time, but we got a couple questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's question. We maybe can talk afterwards. What is everyone's thoughts on the relationship of labor and the Democratic Party? I'll jump in first. I'm a Democrat, but thank you. I'm a Democrat because I'm part of labor. I'm not part of labor because I'm a Democrat. We have good politicians that are Democrats, and we have Democrats that do not stand by labor. Jimmy Carter signed deregulation in the 70s, which gutted the Teamsters union. We had Bill Clinton sign NAFTA, which gutted trade unions in the state and nation. And we've had some disagreements with some of our current elected officials here in Kansas about automated vehicles. Governor Kelly signed an automated vehicle bill that we feel is going to harm our workers. So, but on the other side of that, we have the most labor-friendly president of our lifetime currently right now, and that's true. And that's true. Labor has a seat at the table for everything he decides. And we need good politicians like that. We need to make sure the Democratic Party, it's been a great relationship with Labor and the Democratic Party for years and years and years. We need to make sure that relationship stands strong. And we need to make sure that we're nominating and electing politicians on the Democratic side that stand by labor and stand by workers. And have at it, guys. Just go for it.
Damien, I want to know what you think. I've talked a lot.
I feel like you think I'm going to bash the Democrats. I don't, but, you know, what we really do as an organization need for the Democrats in this state to do is scream loudly about prevailing wage. I mean, that is a huge issue that we don't have. And they need to bring it up and bring it up often. It's, you know, Wyandotte County fought forever about home rule, and they lost that finally. I'd like to see, you know, even Douglas County really fight, you know, to bring that up, because that's our biggest equalizer between the union side and the non-union sector.
As far as relationship, I'll say I've never been to a labor forum hosted by the Republicans, so it's going pretty well. No, in all seriousness, I would say, obviously, traditionally, labor has tend to back Democratic candidates in most races. That it has been the labor rights has been intertwined with the Democratic platform for a long time. I would just say is don't take that vote for granted. If we work to help you get elected, work with us on our issues. Specifically right now, on a state level, I think we need to take another look at the work comp laws. Kansas's work comp ranks very, very low, maybe the lowest compared to other states in the union. Getting hurt at work should not be a sentence to poverty, and for many people in the state of Kansas, it is. That law needs to be changed or amended.
I think there's a really good opportunity here for the Democrats to work to address the reason why we're all here. Like, why are we unionizing in the first place? And a lot of that comes down to safety, wages, benefits. So what can Democrats do in terms of laws, in terms of policies that can really, I mean, I would love for you to take me out of my job. Like, make it so I don't have to be here because the laws take care of wages, they protect school funding, they do all of the things they need to provide quality insurance so I don't have to negotiate it. I don't have to go, you know, every 3 years and look for new insurance policies that might fit our district, but then the rates change and it hurts our members and they take a pay cut because the rates went up. So, you know, I guess that's my challenge is put us all out of a job, because the laws and policies are so high quality that we don't have to unionize anymore to fix what we need to fix.
More questions from the audience, or go over the cards? Yeah, you want, I got you.
I won't take it.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Catherine Klenberkowitz, and thank you all so much for what you do and for being here. But thank you for what you do. It's hard work. In this morning's paper, Journal World, there is the best column, and it is on the opinion page. It's by Alexandra Middlewood, who is an assistant professor of political science at Wichita State University. It is called Solve Worker Shortage, Invest in Women. And there is one thing that stood out to me more than anything. This is a great column about the economy in Kansas and the worker shortage and what we can do about it. But the last part of it has to do with the benefit of labor unions. And the one that I loved was, union representation reduces the gender pay gap for women by nearly 40%, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. I would like to have feedback on that from you about the gender pay gap and how unions address that.
Well, I can say in the building trades, it's pretty simple. There isn't a pay gap at all. I mean, the women in our organization make exactly the same money as the men.
Similar situation for our membership. We've negotiated a pay plan. You're on that pay plan according to seniority, not your gender or anything other like that. We also have rights through our contract to be participating in the hiring process and the promotional process to make sure that things are kept fair for everybody.
We're in the same situation with the salaries, being on a salary matrix. We're all on the same matrix, but I think it is interesting to note that the majority of educators are female, and so I think that's a bigger conversation for that larger view of that system, is that system is fully funded? Are we providing salaries at a high enough rate? I hope that wasn't coffee. If it was coffee, I'm sorry. But yes, just making sure that we're looking at that system on the whole and looking how women are very highly represented in education. Are we making sure that that is being compensated at a highly rate for the high quality work that we do provide?
Any more questions from the audience? Santiago. I think there's a stand right there.
Hi, I'm Santiago Vasquez. I just wanted to ask about the relationship between organized labor and immigration, and specifically undocumented immigration. I know that there's like a long history there, and I know that there's been a lot of tension between the unions and undocumented workers. What kinds of, I guess, is there any insight that y'all have on that relationship, and what do you think we can do to remedy that or to resolve the situation?
I'll take this on, and anyone who wants to jump in. I think companies and corporations exploit workers, period, point blank, in this country. They pit workers and they take advantage of those workers, and it's disgusting. We need to make sure workers that are people giving to the society and giving to our country have a path towards citizenship and have a path to those protections. Just like with the pandemic, Trump I think he did an executive order for a defense order, forcing meatpacking workers, they had to go to work. That's just disgusting. We don't want to give these workers workers' comp. We don't want to give these workers basic protections, but they are forced to go to work during a pandemic. But we don't want to give them the basic dignity, and that needs to change, in my opinion.
So at KU, we actually have to deal with this a lot because a lot of GTAs and graduate workers in general are international workers. And it's kind of an opposite problem. There's no path to legal work for some undocumented workers, but international workers at KU are forced into a system that taxes them and punishes them for generating money for KU, right? So if you're an international worker, you have to come here on a specific visa. You can't have another job, so that means you're tied to working at KU year-round for not enough money. You also have to pay separate fees, exorbitant student fees that KU continues to increase the percentages of. And this was actually one of the reasons that we decided to take a 2-year deal over a 3-year deal, is so that we can do more for international workers on the next round of contracts. Yeah.
I'll just say, I think broadly, one thing that unions can do, and some unions, like the Painters Union, have already done, is support city or state ordinances for sanctuary and non-collaboration with ICE. I think we also see great examples of that with the Chicago Teachers Union, with United Teachers of Los Angeles, right? Bargaining at the table that they're going to not collaborate with ICE or with immigration officials for students and parents. So I think that doesn't address the problem, I think, in the private sector, right, of employers calling immigration on workers, especially as a tactic in breaking an organizing drive, but does address, I think, how we shift the legal regime to make sure that people can stay and can work and live their lives and have, full dignity as humans and citizens.
mean, the simple answer is there's really no path. I mean, it's basic human trafficking is what's going on in the non-union sector on some of this. And as embarrassing as to say I could take everybody in my truck and have by 7:30 in the morning, I could take you to a case in Kansas. It's, until they can really prosecute employers that are doing it and actually have laws that make teeth, we're never going to end this problem.
I know you mentioned KU students specifically not being able to organize. For KU students that might be interested in helping that process, I know we recently had a KU Democratic Socialists of, Young Democratic Social of America start up there. For students that are interested in labor organizing and standing up for their rights, who should they go to? What can they do?
That's a great question. You can come talk to me. I'm always happy to talk about labor. As a union, we're also thinking about, so this is a little bit of background, I'm sorry if it's boring, but at the University of Kansas, graduate worker is actually 3 different distinct categories. There's graduate assistants, so that can be literally anything from someone in the marching band to someone who is working at a federally funded lab in the aerospace department, right? There's also graduate research assistants, again, often in the sciences, and then GTAs, which is who we cover. We do not get to cover all 3 Gs, but we are working on that, thinking about how to reclassify to get all of the graduate workers under one big umbrella. But if you want to come talk to us about how to do that, like, I'll find you after, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to
No, it's fine. I have a thought. So I think if you are a young person and you care about social justice and you care about changing this country, you should become a union member. Like, going back to what Damien said, we should have more people going into the trades. We should have more people going into union jobs, more people getting ready to fight for a really good contract at UPS under the new Teamsters union leadership. We certainly want people to come and work as hourly staff in Lawrence Public Schools and help build our union and help make our schools the schools our students deserve. So I think, like, that's the best advice I would give any young people in college or not, is get a union job or organize your workplace, because that's how we're going to change this country.
That's right. If you call the Teamsters, we'll help you form your union.